The human called her beautiful. The alien's response silenced the entire room. The observation deck of Kepler Station hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 different species gathered for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Among them stood David Torres, a young cultural anthropologist from Earth, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed out at the swirling nebula beyond the reinforced windows. This was humanity's first formal introduction to the Galactic Council, and the weight of representing his entire species pressed heavily on his shoulders. The Zephyrians had called this meeting after humanity's surprising victory against the Void. Hunters, a parasitic race that had terrorized the Outer Rim for centuries. What should have been humanity's destruction had instead become their greatest triumph. And now every species wanted to understand these newcomers who had accomplished the impossible. As David turned from the window, his eyes fell upon the most striking being he had ever encountered. She stood apart from the other delegates, her tall, graceful form commanding attention without effort. Her skin held an opalescent quality that shifted between deep purple and silver depending on the light, and her eyes were pools of liquid starlight. 4 delicate arms moved with fluid precision as she reviewed holographic documents, each gesture speaking of centuries of refined culture. This was Nyxaria, prime diplomat of the Ethereal Collective, a species known throughout the galaxy for their unmatched beauty and intellectual superiority. The Ethereals were revered as living works of art, their entire civilization built upon the pursuit of aesthetic and philosophical perfection. They rarely spoke to other species, considering most life forms too crude to warrant their attention. Formal presentations had been proceeding for hours. Each species had shared their achievements, their technologies, their contributions to galactic civilization. When humanity's turn arrived, David had spoken simply about their adaptability, their refusal to surrender, and their capacity for hope in the darkest circumstances. The other delegates had listened politely, but he could sense their skepticism. During the recess, David found himself standing near the refreshment area, watching as various species mingled in small groups. He noticed that Nyxaria remained isolated, her expression distant and contemplative. Something about her solitude reminded him of his own feelings of displacement in this vast gathering of ancient civilizations. Without fully considering the implications, David approached her. The conversations around them gradually quieted as other delegates noticed a human daring to address the ethereal prime diplomat directly. Nyxaria turned her luminous gaze upon him, her expression unreadable. "Forgive the interruption," David said, his voice steady despite the weight of dozens of eyes upon them. "I wanted to say that your presentation on dimensional aesthetics was fascinating. The way your people perceive beauty across multiple planes of existence is remarkable." Nyxaria tilted her head slightly, studying him with an intensity that made the air seem to shimmer around them. When she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species. But there was something else beneath its surprise, perhaps even curiosity. "You understood the theoretical framework?" she asked, her 4 hands stilling completely. "Most species find our concepts too abstract to comprehend." "Beauty transcends language barriers," David replied with a gentle smile. "Though, I admit, your people's ability to perceive it in quantum structures is far beyond human capability. But we recognize it when we see it." He paused, then added with genuine warmth, "You are beautiful, by the way. Not just in the way your people define it, but in a way that speaks to something universal." The silence that followed was absolute. Every delegate in the chamber turned to stare at them, some with shock, others with barely concealed horror. No one addressed an ethereal so casually, and certainly no one commented on their appearance as if they were equals. But David's attention was entirely focused on Nyxaria's reaction. Her opalescent skin began to shift through colors he had never seen before deep crimsons, warm golds, soft lavenders. Her starlight eyes widened, and for the first time since the meeting began, her perfect composure cracked. Her 4 hands trembled slightly as she pressed them against her chest, over where a human heart would be. When she spoke again, her musical voice carried an undertone of something raw and unexpected. "In 3,000 years of existence," she whispered, loud enough for the entire room to hear, "no being has ever called me beautiful in a way that made me feel it." The diplomatic chamber remained frozen in stunned silence. David could feel the weight of every stare, the shock radiating from delegates who had never witnessed an ethereal display such raw emotion. But his focus remained entirely on Nyxaria, whose opalescent skin continued to shift through impossible colors like a living aurora. "You feel it?" David asked softly, taking a half-step closer. The question seemed to break something inside her. Nyxaria's 4 hands moved to cover her face, a gesture so unexpectedly vulnerable that several delegates gasped. When she lowered them, her starlight eyes held tears that sparkled like captured starlight. "We are taught from birth that we are living embodiments of perfection," she said, her voice no longer carrying its usual melodic control. "We are observed, studied, admired from a distance. But no one has ever looked at me and seen ... She struggled for the words. ... me." The Zephyrian ambassador, a towering being with crystalline features, stepped forward with obvious concern. "Prime Diplomat Nyxaria, perhaps you require medical attention? Such displays of emotion are unprecedented for your species." Nyxaria turned toward the ambassador, and for the first time in the meeting, there was fire in her ethereal beauty. "Unprecedented, yes, but not unwelcome." She looked back at David, her gaze intense. "Your species does something to us that defies our understanding of physics and philosophy." "What do you mean?" David asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. "You see us as individuals rather than representatives of our species. Aesthetic achievement. You speak to us as equals rather than artifacts to be admired." Her skin shifted to deeper hues as she continued. "In your simple words, you accomplished what 3 millennia of ethereal philosophy could not. You made me feel truly seen." The Chromian delegate, a being of living metal and circuitry, processed this information with audible mechanical whirring. "This is highly irregular. The ethereals do not form emotional attachments to other species. Their neural architecture prevents such connections." "Our neural architecture," Nyxaria said, turning to address the entire assembly, "was designed to appreciate abstract beauty and maintain emotional distance. But this human's perception operates on a frequency we never anticipated." She faced David again. "When you called me beautiful, you weren't admiring my species' genetic perfection. You were recognizing something deeper." David nodded slowly. "I was seeing you. Not the ethereal prime diplomat, not a representative of galactic beauty standards, just ... you, Nyxaria." The way he said her name caused another cascade of colors across her skin. She took a step closer to him, her 4 hands reaching out tentatively before pulling back. "This is impossible," whispered the Vorthan representative, a cloud-like being whose gaseous form flickered with anxiety. "Ethereals don't experience personal attraction. They exist above such basic emotions. Above them, or denied them." Nyxaria asked, her question hanging in the air like a challenge to everything the galaxy thought it knew about her species. "For 3,000 years, we have pursued perfection by suppressing what we considered base emotions. But what if we were wrong? What if the capacity for connection, for feeling truly seen by another, is not a weakness but the highest form of beauty?" David felt his heart racing. This wasn't just a cultural exchange anymore. This was a moment that could reshape how entire civilizations understood emotion, beauty, and connection. "Nyxaria," he said gently, What are you saying? She looked directly into his eyes, her starlight, gaze unwavering. I'm saying that in 30 seconds of genuine human interaction, you showed me something my entire civilization has spent millennia trying to achieve through art and philosophy. You showed me what it feels like to be truly beautiful, not as an object to be admired, but as a being to be known. The implications of her words sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. If an ethereal could experience such profound, emotional connection with a human, what did that mean for the established order of galactic civilization? This changes everything, the Cromnian delegate stated, mechanical voice carrying an undertone of wonder. If humans can inspire such responses, in species previously thought incapable of deep emotional connection, then perhaps, Ixaria finished, it's time for the galaxy to reconsider what it means to be truly advanced. She extended one of her 4 hands toward David, palm up in a gesture of openness. David Torres of Earth, will you help me understand this feeling that your words have awakened in me? David reached out and gently took her hand, marveling at how her skin felt like warm starlight made solid. I'd be honored to try. The moment David's hand touched Nyxarius, a pulse of energy seemed to flow between them that was visible to every delegate in the chamber. Her opalescent skin blazed with new colors, warm coppers, and rose golds that no ethereal had ever displayed. The other delegates watched in fascination and growing alarm as their understanding of galactic biology was challenged before their eyes. Impossible, breathed the Helix Coalition representative, a serpentine being whose scaled form rippled with agitation. Ethereals are incapable of such physiological responses to other species. Their emotional centers were genetically modified. Eons ago, Nyxaria turned to face the assembly while keeping her hand in David's. Perhaps our ancestors were more afraid of feeling than we realized. Perhaps they saw emotion not as a weakness to be eliminated, but as a power too dangerous to be trusted. Her words carried across the chamber with unprecedented authority. Here was the prime diplomat of the most aesthetically advanced species in the galaxy, questioning the very foundations of her civilization's superiority. David, she said, turning back to him with an expression of wonder and confusion. When you look at me, what do you see? David considered his answer carefully, aware that his words carried weight far beyond personal conversation. I see someone who has spent her entire life being told she was perfect, but never being asked what she wanted. I see intelligence, grace, and a loneliness so deep that it's become part of your identity. I see someone who is beautiful, not because of genetic engineering, but because of who you choose to be in this moment. The colors cascading across Nyxaria's skin intensified, creating patterns that resembled abstract art in motion. No one has ever. She paused, struggling with concepts her language had no words for. In our society, we exist to be admired, not to be understood. We achieve perfection, but we never achieve connection. That sounds incredibly lonely, David said simply. Lonely. She repeated the word as if tasting something foreign and wonderful. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Lonely. Her 4 hands moved to touch her chest again. This feeling inside me is this what humans call heartache? Sometimes, David nodded, but it can also be the beginning of something beautiful. The ache of wanting to connect with someone who sees you for who you really are. The Zephyrian ambassador intervened with obvious concern. Prime diplomat, your emotional display is causing distress among the other ethereal delegates. Perhaps you should return to your quarters for recalibration. For the first time in recorded history, an ethereal refused a direct suggestion from a senior diplomatic authority. No, Nyxaria said firmly, her grip on David's hand tightening. I will not return to the empty perfection I've known for 3 millennia. This human has shown me something my people have forgotten, the beauty of being truly seen by another consciousness. She addressed the full assembly, her voice carrying a new strength. We ethereals have spent eons pursuing aesthetic perfection, while ignoring the deepest truth about beauty. It only has meaning when it's shared with someone who appreciates not just what you appear to be, but who you choose to become. The Vorthen delegate's gaseous form flickered with rapid calculations. The implications of this development cannot be overstated. If ethereals can form deep emotional bonds with other species, particularly humans, it could reshape every alliance and power structure in the galaxy. Good, Nyxaria said, surprising everyone with the firmness of her response. Perhaps it's time for those structures to change. She turned back to David, her starlight eyes holding depths he was only beginning to understand. You asked me what I wanted earlier. I want to learn about this feeling. I want to understand what it means to be seen as more than a perfect specimen. I want to know what it's like to choose connection over isolation. That's a journey that could take a lifetime, David said softly. Then I choose to take that journey, she replied without hesitation. With you, if you'll have me. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs from every species present. The Cromnian delegate's mechanical systems whirred at maximum capacity as it processed the unprecedented nature of this development. David looked into her eyes and saw not the distant perfection of an ethereal diplomat, but a being taking her first steps toward authentic connection. I'd be honored to learn alongside you. This is madness, declared the Helix representative. An ethereal abandoning her cultural programming for emotional attachment to a human? The Galactic Council will never accept such deviation from established norms. Nyxaria's skin blazed with defiant colors as she addressed the objection. Then perhaps the Galactic Council needs to evolve beyond its established norms. If humanity has taught me anything in these few moments, it's that the courage to be vulnerable, to be seen, to connect authentically with another being, that is the highest form of beauty any species can achieve. She squeezed David's hand as she made her final declaration to the assembly. I formally request to study human culture and emotion as part of an extended diplomatic mission, not as an observer of their military capabilities, but as a student of their capacity for authentic connection. The request sent shockwaves through the gathered delegates, but David felt a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with alien biology and everything to do with two beings choosing to see each other as they truly were. The emergency session convened within hours of Nyxaria's unprecedented request. Representatives from 23 species filled the expanded council chamber, their various forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity united by a single shared emotion. Complete bewilderment at what they had witnessed, David sat in the human delegation area, feeling simultaneously honored and terrified to be at the center of what was clearly becoming a galactic incident. Across the chamber, Nyxaria stood with the ethereal delegation, but her usual perfect posture had been replaced by something more human, a slight forward lean as if she were fighting against invisible restraints. High Counselor Vex Thara, an ancient being whose crystalline form had witnessed the rise and fall of multiple civilizations, called the session to order with a resonance that made the chamber walls vibrate. We are here to address an unprecedented situation, Vex Thara announced, their voice carrying the weight of eons. For the first time in recorded galactic history, an ethereal has displayed uncontrolled, emotional responses to another species and requested to abandon their cultural programming. The ethereal delegation leader, a being called Zephyros, whose perfection made even Nyxaria seem approachable, rose to address the council. Prime Diplomat Nyxaria's behavior represents a fundamental deviation from ethereal neural architecture. We request immediate medical intervention to restore her proper emotional calibration. No, the word rang out across the chamber with surprising force. Nyxaria had stepped forward, her four hands clenched at her sides, her opalescent skin blazing. with colors that had never been documented in ethereal biology. I refuse medical intervention. What I'm experiencing is not a malfunction, it's an awakening. The Cromnian delegate's mechanical voice cut through the murmurs. Define awakening in quantifiable terms, Prime Diplomat. Nyxaria's gaze found David across the chamber, and the warmth in her starlight eyes was visible even from a distance. For 3,000 years, I have existed in a state of aesthetic perfection without purpose beyond being admired. In one conversation with David Torres, I discovered what my people abandoned when we chose perfection over connection, the ability to see and be seen as individuals rather than specimens. This human has somehow bypassed ethereal psychological defenses, added Dr. Chenvik, the delegation's chief scientist. The implications for galactic security are staggering. If humans can influence ethereal emotional states so dramatically ... then perhaps, interrupted a new voice, it's time. We examined why those defenses existed in the first place. All eyes turned to the speaker Kaiden, a representative from the empathic collective, a species known for their ability to sense and share emotions across vast distances. His humanoid form was slight compared to most delegates, but his presence commanded immediate attention. The empathic collective has monitored emotional resonances throughout this crisis. Kaiden continued. What we detected from Prime Diplomat Nyxaria was not infection or manipulation, it was recognition. She recognized something in the human's perception that her own species had forgotten how to feel. Zephyros' perfect features showed the closest thing to anger an ethereal could display. The empathic collective has no authority to analyze ethereal emotional states. We have authority to analyze emotional states that affect galactic stability, Kaiden replied calmly. And what we found suggests that ethereals didn't lose the capacity for deep connection. They suppressed it so completely that they forgot it existed. The chamber erupted in debates as species took sides on what was rapidly becoming a philosophical war. David watched Nyxaria standing alone among her own people and made a decision that would either unite or divide the galaxy. He stood and requested permission to address the council. Human Delegate Torres, High Counselor Vexthara acknowledged. You may speak. David walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of galactic history pressing down on him. Honorable delegates, I'm not a diplomat or a scientist. I'm just someone who recognized beauty when I saw it, not the engineered perfection of ethereal genetics, but the courage of someone choosing to be vulnerable, despite 3 millennia of conditioning against it. He turned to face Nyxaria directly. When I called her beautiful, I wasn't trying to manipulate or influence anyone. I was simply acknowledging what I saw a being who was perfect in her strength, not her appearance. Perfect in her willingness to question everything she'd been taught in order to experience something real. Nyxaria's skin blazed with rose gold. Intensity as she stepped forward. And in that moment of being truly seen, I chose to feel rather than simply exist. I chose connection over isolation. I chose to be imperfect and alive rather than perfect and empty. This choice, she continued, addressing the full assembly, is not a betrayal of ethereal culture. It's a completion of it. True beauty isn't just aesthetic perfection. It's the courage to be vulnerable enough to let someone else see who you really are. High Counselor Vexthara processed this for long moments before speaking. The implications of accepting this perspective would require restructuring our understanding of multiple civilizations and their interactions. Good, Nyxaria and David said simultaneously, their voices blending in perfect harmony across the chamber. The moment of synchronicity sent a ripple of energy through the assembled delegates, not the energy of conflict, but of possibility. For the first time in galactic history, the pursuit of connection was being valued as highly as the pursuit of perfection. I formally request, Nyxaria announced, extended cultural exchange status to study human approaches to authentic connection. with David Torres as my assigned cultural liaison. The chamber fell silent as the High Counselor considered this unprecedented request. The decision made here would either open new frontiers of interspecies understanding or shatter the foundations of galactic civilization. Request ... approved. Vexthara finally announced, their ancient voice carrying notes of curiosity rather than certainty. Let us see what this human concept of beautiful can teach us all. 6 months after the historic council session, the observation deck of Kepler Station hosted a very different kind of gathering. Representatives from 47 species had come to witness what was being called the ethereal renaissance, cultural revolution that had begun with one human's simple observation and one ethereal's courage to feel. David stood beside Nyxeria as they watched ships arriving from across the galaxy. Her transformation over the past months had been remarkable to witness. Where once her perfection had been cold and distant, it now radiated warmth and genuine emotion. Her opalescent skin had developed new color patterns that ethereal scientists were scrambling to understand hues that appeared only when she experienced what humans called joy. The delegation from the sorrowful reaches just arrived, Nyxeria observed, her 4 hands working at a holographic display showing emotional resonance patterns. They've never left their home system before. What changed their minds? David asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. They heard that someone had learned how to transform sorrow into connection, she replied, her starlight eyes reflecting depths of understanding that hadn't existed 6 months ago. They want to learn if healing is possible for species that have known only isolation. The cultural exchange program that had grown from their initial request had exceeded everyone's expectations. What began as one, ethereal's desire to understand human emotion, had evolved into a galactic movement toward authentic interspecies connection. Dr. Kaiden, from the empathic collective, approached them, his usually serene expression animated with excitement. The preliminary results from the joint studies are extraordinary. 17 species previously thought to be incapable of emotional bonding have reported breakthrough experiences after adopting human-inspired communication techniques. What kind of breakthroughs? David inquired. The mechanical hegemony discovered they could experience what they're calling algorithmic affection, deep appreciation for individual processing patterns rather than mere computational efficiency. The hive queens are learning to value singular perspectives within their collective consciousness. Even the void seekers are exploring concepts beyond their traditional nihilistic philosophy. Nyxeria's skin shifted to warm golden tones as she processed this information. So it wasn't just me. The capacity for deeper connection exists across multiple species. It simply needed recognition and permission to emerge. The human approach to seeing individuals rather than species representatives appears to activate dormant neural pathways in ways we never anticipated, Kaiden agreed. Your initial response to David's words has become a template for breakthrough moments across the galaxy. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The holographic projector activated, revealing High Counselor Vexthara, whose ancient crystalline form somehow appeared more vibrant than before. David Torres, Prime Diplomat Nyxeria. The High Counselor addressed them formally, but with warmth. That would have been impossible months earlier. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding the permanent implementation of the cultural connection protocol you've developed. David felt his heart rate increase. The protocol they'd created based on seeing beings as individuals first and species. Representatives second had been tested across dozens of civilizations with remarkable results. But permanent implementation would represent a fundamental shift in how galactic society functioned. The results speak for themselves, Vexthara continued. Conflict resolution has improved by 63%. Trade partnerships have increased by 40%. Most significantly, 17 previously isolated species have joined the galactic community for the first time in millennia. Nyxeria stepped forward, her 4 hands clasped in a gesture of hope. Are you saying? I'm saying that the simple act of one human calling one, ethereal, beautiful, truly seeing her as an individual worthy of recognition rather than just admiration has initiated the most significant evolution in galactic civilization since the founding of the Council itself. The weight of those words settled over David like starlight. What had begun as a genuine compliment to someone he found remarkable had somehow become a catalyst for interspecies understanding on a scale he never could have imagined. There is one final matter, Vexthara added. The Council formally invites Earth to become a full member of the galactic community, with humanity serving as the official cultural connection specialists for all first contact and diplomatic breakthrough situations. David looked at Nyxeria, whose entire being seemed to glow with joy and pride. We'd be honored to accept that responsibility. And I, Nyxeria added, formally request to serve as humanity's partner in this role, representing not just ethereal interests, but the perspective of all species, learning to choose connection over isolation. As the transmission ended, David and Nyxeria stood together watching more ships arrive, beings from across the galaxy coming to learn about the revolutionary concept of seeing each other as individuals worthy of understanding rather than specimens worthy only of cataloging. Do you ever regret it? David asked quietly. Giving up the perfect isolation of ethereal culture for all this complexity? Nyxeria turned to him, her starlight eyes holding depths of emotion that would have been impossible for any ethereal to experience before their first conversation. David, for 3,000 years I was perfect, but I was never alive. You showed me that being seen, truly seen, by someone who values who you choose to be, is more beautiful than any aesthetic perfection ever achieved. She reached out with one of her 4 hands, and he took it without hesitation, marveling as always at how her skin felt like warm starlight made solid. Besides, she added with a smile that had been practiced and perfected over months of learning human expressions, we've proven that the most beautiful thing in the universe isn't perfection. It's the courage to be vulnerable enough to let someone else see your heart. As ships from across the galaxy continued to arrive, each carrying beings ready to learn about the revolutionary power of authentic connection, David realized that sometimes the most profound changes in the universe began with the simplest truth. Everyone, regardless of species or background, wanted to be seen and valued for who they chose to be. The human called her beautiful, and her response had indeed silenced a room. But more than that, it had awakened the galaxy to the possibility that true beauty lay not in perfection, but in the courage to connect authentically with another soul. In the end, that was the most human thing of all. The instinctive recognition that being seen and valued as an individual was the foundation of all meaningful relationships, whether between 2 people or 2 civilizations reaching across the stars to understand each other.